Donald Trump was nearly assassinated at an election rally. Days later, CNN reported on intelligence of an alleged Iranian plot to kill Trump. And just 2 years ago, the IRGC's Air Force commander threatening to kill Trump in the following recording.
God willing, we will kill Trump, Pompeo, this McKenzie, these military commanders that gave the order. They need to be killed.
With us today to unpack these developments is John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. I'm Negar Mojtahedi, and this is Eye for Iran. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador Bolton. Following the assassination attempt, Trump appears to have gained momentum that makes a second Trump administration seem more than likely. CNN is reporting intel now that Iran is plotting to kill Trump, although we don't know if that's connected to the would-be assassin from Pennsylvania, of course. All of this could have a huge impact on the future of Iran-U.S. relations. How will this alleged Iranian plot impact Trump's Iran policy should he become president again? Do you think that a man like Trump would take it personally and have it impact foreign policy?
Well, we've known really for quite some time that in the wake of the elimination of Qasem Soleimani in January of 2020, that the Ayatollah Khamenei and his regime have wanted to take revenge against the United States. And they have gone after a number of Americans that they associate with the decision to give Soleimani an early exit. Obviously, Trump was the president at the time, and others of us who are in that group were subordinates of his. So we've known of the threat against President Trump really since that time. And I, having been out of the government even before Soleimani's death, I don't claim to have any inside knowledge or any knowledge of the intelligence. But this is surprising to me that seems to be the first indication of the regime in Tehran actually taking some step toward going after Trump, and to do it in the middle of a presidential election campaign. Where Trump was at least competitive as they began planning a possible assassination, I do find surprising, because I think it would be contrary to human nature not to take it personally that somebody's trying to kill you. So, we'll see what comes next, but it was certainly something that resulted in the Secret Service trying to take more protection. We don't know publicly, at least, exactly what the threat was or what its duration might be, or whether they might go after others if they can't get Trump, whose security obviously would be quite extensive.
But Ambassador Bolton, you were Trump's national security advisor. As someone who had that kind of position, do you foresee or predict how Trump is going to deal with Iran should he become president? I mean, would he invade Iran?
Well, I don't think that's really on the menu of things he would consider, and I don't think we really know what Trump would do at this point, because that's not the way he thinks. He doesn't have a philosophy. He doesn't think in policy terms as we conventionally understand that. He reacts in episodic, transactional ways, and he views things through the prism of what would benefit him. Certainly in his first term, after we withdrew from the nuclear deal, the 2015 nuclear deal, and reimposed significant economic sanctions on Iran, we were trying to exert maximum pressure on the regime to get it to give up its pursuit of nuclear weapons and support for terrorism, its ballistic missile program. We didn't succeed, in part because we didn't really exert maximum pressure. The sanctions were not as applied as effectively as they might have been. And ultimately, in my view, the only real way we're going to get peace and security in the region and a just regime for the people of Iran is when the mullahs are deposed and a representative government is put in place. What would Trump do now after 4 years of the Biden administration's efforts to get back in the nuclear deal, not restraining the regime in Tehran for its aggression in the Middle East, which is ongoing even as we speak, in the Ring of Fire strategy against Israel, and really threatening the other Gulf neighbors as well. I don't know. It may be he reverts to a pretty tough policy, or it may be that the lure of a big negotiation with Iran would be enough to convince him to talk. Certainly, the election of the new Iranian president is putting a happy face on a pretty terrible regime. And that might be the logic may be, well, as long as we've got a different face than the butcher of Tehran, which is what President Raisi was called, maybe we can get the Americans back into a negotiation, and Trump might fall for it.
Oh, you think he would actually fall for the deception? The so-called deception that people are saying this is?
Well, I think it's possible. I recount in my book the story of when we were at the G7 meeting in Biarritz, France, in August of 2019. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, had kind of smuggled in Javad Zarif, who was then foreign minister for the regime, and Macron had a long one-on-one lunch with Trump to try and persuade him to meet with Zarif. Right after that lunch, Trump asked me and Mick Mulvaney, the chief of staff, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, to meet with him in his hotel room to talk about whether he should meet with Zarif. And I argued he should not. Mulvaney argued he should not. Jared Kushner said he should. And ultimately he decided not to, but it was very, very close. So remembering that Trump is the first American president to meet with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, not accomplishing anything, but having
fire and fury and then relations
right.
After that, right?
Right, and then a great publicity for these meetings. Don't put it past Trump to do the same with Iran.
And when it comes to Donald Trump, I mean, the Donald Trump we saw in 2016 as a candidate, in terms of the rhetoric, was quite tough on Iran. And of course, as you know yourself, 2019 enlisting the IRGC as a terrorist entity, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, taking out Qasem Soleimani. But then, experts are also saying that Trump's relations with Vladimir Putin could mean that we might see a different version of him potentially this time around should he become the president of the United States again. He's promising to pull out of NATO. People are saying that the war in Ukraine would end, that there would be no more American support in Ukraine. Would that in some ways embolden the Iranian regime due to the access between Iran, Russia, and China? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's possible. If I could just go back to this question of negotiations between the U.S. and the regime, even in the weeks before Trump decided to withdraw in May of 2018, he met with Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. He met with Emmanuel Macron. And to both of them, he said, responding really to Macron's suggestion, let's have a bigger deal with Iran. Let's have a deal that handles the nuclear issue, handles their support for terrorism, handles their ballistic missile program. Let's deal with everything. And in the meantime, keep the nuclear deal in place. Trump said he'd love to make a bigger deal. Now, I think there's zero chance of a bigger deal that would be acceptable to the United States, but Trump was willing to consider it. He just wanted to get out of the nuclear deal first. So this zeal for the deal, as the phrase goes, is very strong in Trump, and I think could lead him into negotiations. In terms of what else he might do, it's always an open book with Trump, and as these ideas are put forward, he'll consider them unrelated to decisions he's made before that.
And what about J.D. Vance as his choice for a VP pick? J.D. Vance, again, tough rhetoric when it comes to Iran, but at the same time, we've heard him say that he doesn't believe in war on Iranian soil. What does his pick as running mate tell you when it comes to potential for foreign policy with Iran should they come into office?
Well, it didn't answer your question about Ukraine and the relationship between Russia and Iran, but it's drawn directly into question here by getting Vance into the picture, because Vance has been essentially willing to give Ukraine up. He thinks it's a territorial dispute. It's not worth the level of interest that the Biden administration has displayed in it. And I think while Vance has said negative things about the regime in Tehran. He has taken largely a pro-Israel position in the Middle East. I don't think Vance has fixed national security positions either. I think his political success, winning the Republican primary for the Senate in 2022, winning the election in 2022, was materially aided by support from Donald Trump. And I think he wants to do what gains him support with Trump. I think he follows Trump. He doesn't lead him. Although, if they're both elected, obviously there'll be an interchange. The dominant force in the relationship is Trump, and I think he sees Vance as somebody who can implement what he wants to do. I think it will complicate the question of how to deal with the regime in Tehran, because this axis between China and Russia, which is not perfectly formed, it's still in the process, but with outriders like North Korea, Iran, Belarus, and others, it presents a very different dynamic with respect to Iran, especially than Trump faced in his first term in office. So given that it's a different environment, if Putin says to him, listen, part of what we need to do is get things straight between you and Iran, Trump may well jump at it.
You think he'll just do it then? And that leads me to my next question. A lot of Iranian Americans are saying that they're going to vote for Republicans for Trump this time around because they feel that he is going to be tough on Iran. It seems like you really don't think that he might end up being that way.
Well, basically what I'm trying to say is with Trump, you never can tell. When he makes a decision, we used to say it's never final until it's final, and then sometimes it's still not final. So given a different environment in the White House, given different advisors, given different circumstances with Russia and China, when you throw the pickup sticks up in the air, they can come down in a different way. And so I understand fully why people don't think that Biden's handling of Iran has been satisfactory, and it certainly has not. There is no guarantee that Trump will pursue policies that he tried to pursue in the first term. And I will say, I never convinced him that regime change was the only ultimate answer. But I think it is for American national security interests and for the people of Iran as well.
Now, Ambassador Bolton, I have to ask you, you yourself faced an assassination attempt orchestrated by the Iranian government in 2021, according to the Justice Department. Does that in some way bring you closer to Mr. Trump, despite the falling out and Trump even firing you via Twitter? What do you make of that?
Well, I resigned. He tweeted after I had handed in my resignation. I should have tweeted first. I shouldn't have let him tweet. I believe in preemption. I should have practiced it. Look, I think while we didn't follow through in the Trump administration, certainly while I was there in the way that we should have, Trump campaigned in 2016 on getting out of the Iran nuclear deal. It was one of the clearest positions that he took. In the first year plus of his administration, he wasn't able to do it. I'm proud to say that I was able to help out and help him do what he said he wanted to do to get out of the deal. So I don't take a negative position on everything Donald Trump has done. I think you have to look at, he treats everything as a discrete decision, and you have to evaluate him that way. It's possible he could take a harder line in the second term. I just think that this desire to get publicity, to do something no other American president has done, and above all else, the highest goal in Trump's life is to make big deals. And that certainly leaves the door open to not rapprochement with Tehran, but with a lessening of the confrontation.
Now, speaking of the threat that you were under, do you still face threats from the Iranian regime? And I know you don't talk about it a lot, but has your life changed at all as a result of that?
Well, I still have Secret Service protection, and that's because it's what is indicated in the intelligence. As you mentioned, the documents on one aspect of my situation, the criminal charges against Shamar Parsavi of the Revolutionary Guards, are on the Justice Department website, so they're a matter of public record, which puts me in a somewhat unique position. But I think if you read the criminal charges that were filed, it was very serious. They were trying to hire a hitman. At that time, I didn't have Secret Service protection. I'm grateful that President Biden has ordered it again. It's fundamentally not that different than what I had when I was National Security Advisor, so I've lived through it before. I'm very appreciative of the work that the Secret Service does. They're very much at risk guarding somebody like me. I wish I didn't have to worry about it, but I'm glad to be under the Secret Service protection. It certainly beats the alternative.
Now, speaking of the Iranian threat, a couple of years ago, Trump faced direct threats from the IRGC officials. Even Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei had tweeted a threatening image of Donald Trump golfing under the shadow of a warplane. But since the shooting of Trump in Pennsylvania, no one from Iran's government has directly commented on it. What do you make of that apparent silence?
Well, it to me is at least indirect confirmation that they were looking at doing something. And I'm not saying it had anything to do with the incident in Pennsylvania. There's zero evidence to that effect. It's hard to believe that the shooter would be the instrument they would use, given no evidence of a connection between him and Iran beforehand. But I think that having been foiled in their effort to come after me and some efforts against Masih Alinejad and Salman Rushdie and efforts against the Iranian diaspora in Europe in particular that have not been successful or only partially successful. It may be the regime is trying to come up with creative new ways to go after its enemies. And so I would take this seriously. I think it's appropriate to take it seriously, and it's potentially not simply a threat against Trump at the moment, although he may be the focal point. It may indicate how the mullahs are looking to go after others that they want to eliminate.
And one last question, Ambassador Bolton. Israeli insiders have said that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is waiting to make a final call on how to deal with Iran after October 7th to see if Trump is elected into office. And if he is elected president, that there could potentially be a military coalition between the U.S. and Israel against Iran. What's your take on that?
Well, I think Netanyahu understands the threat from the Islamic Revolution probably as well as any leader in Israel or the United States. I think the central mistake of the Biden administration is they're not treating what Hamas did on October the 7th as part of the Ring of Fire strategy. Hamas just didn't wake up one fine morning and decide to attack Israel. And I think Netanyahu hopes that Trump would see the bigger picture, and he'd rather have somebody in the White House that he thinks he could trust. I wouldn't be so sure of that for the same reasons we just discussed about uncertainty about Trump on Iran. He might have a somewhat different view on Israel, too. But the fact is, Israel is currently threatened, obviously, with the ongoing hostilities in Gaza, but from Hezbollah and the attacks on northern Israel. So I'm not sure how much discretion Netanyahu and the Israelis have to wait until the election before they might have to take steps in their own self-defense.
And when it comes to October 7th, Trump has said time and time and again that would have never happened under his watch. Do you agree?
Well, it's one of those Trump statements that's neither provable nor disprovable. Nobody knows because he wasn't president. And he said the Russians never would have attacked Ukraine if he were president. Well, who knows? I mean, I don't think it would have changed their calculus that much. But it's a very convincing political way to attack Joe Biden, and I think that's what motivates it. That's why Trump is uncertain and unpredictable. Some people think that's a virtue. I think for his allies, it's something that just keeps them up at night.
And what do you expect next from the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Well, I think the unfolding of the Ring of Fire strategy has not turned out the way they expected. Hamas has been not totally destroyed yet, but very badly damaged. They've seen weaknesses in the West, though. The fact the Houthis have shut down commerce in the Red Sea largely, and that we haven't done anything to open it up again is a very bad signal. The unwillingness to protect Americans.
I'm sorry,
in Syria.
can I interrupt you there? I'm so sorry. When you talked about the Houthis, in 2019, when they attacked Saudi Arabia, Trump had an opportunity to potentially launch war against Iran. Why did he hold back?
Well, look, these were attacks on oil infrastructure and civilian airports, and there were several things that could have been done about Iran, and Trump didn't want to do it, and I think that shows the hollowness of his policy. It's one thing to get out of the 2015 nuclear deal, which after all was an Obama deal, and he was against anything Obama did. But when it came to the fundamental question of what do you do about the regime in Tehran, he didn't want to do anything significant.
Why is that?
Because I think he's afraid of the potential consequences. He doesn't fully understand what's at stake in dealing with Iran, as he doesn't understand many significant international questions. And despite the very strong rhetoric he often employs, when it comes down to it, he's not willing to take tough action. In that respect, ironically, not that different from Biden.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bolton, for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Glad to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You can always weigh in on the discussion in the comments below. We'd love to know what you think. The Eye for Iran podcast series is created by Iran International, the go-to destination for expert Iranian news in both Farsi and English. For more, head to our dedicated English website, iranintl.com/en.